Hi, everybody. Welcome to our Small Business Month Lunch and Learn. We will be talking about energy where it applies to small businesses. There will be snapshots of information that is relevant for small business owners, as well as examples of complaints and information and tips to help you better plan for your business needs where it comes to energy. My name is Tamara White, and I'm the Community Engagement and Dispute Resolution Officer at E1. I'll just start, though, by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which I present from today, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I recognise their connection to land, waters, and culture, and pay my respects to elders past and present. So the Energy Ombudsman, as many of you will probably know, is an ombudsman scheme for electricity and gas customers in New South Wales and some water customers. We offer fair, free and independent dispute resolution services. And essentially the idea is that if you have an issue, a complaint with your retailer and you haven't been able to resolve it with them, you raise it with us and we try and see what it is that we can do to help you reach an outcome that is fair and reasonable. So we consider complaints from various different bodies and people. Community workers and advocates raise complaints with us on behalf of their clients, people that have energy and water accounts, as well as people that operate or work in small businesses. What I'll do is give a little bit of a complaints update just to provide a snapshot of where complaints are in the energy industry, particularly with relation to small businesses up until now. So thus far, our complaints have been increasing and they're up 22% from 2021-22. So we've received 17,852 complaints, which is an increase. The rise in the complaints can be attributed to the external cost of living pressures. We all know that everyone is experiencing a pinch in all different areas of their lives, and this is definitely translating to what people are experiencing in the energy industry as well. We looked at complaints and the way that we received them, and when reviewing the percentage of complaints for different energies, we saw that we've got 77 complaints or percent in electricity, 18% in the gas sector, and 4% in the water sector, with the vast majority being in the area of billing. So when we did a little bit of a data dive and looked at the stats that were having an impact on cost of living and the work that we do at E1, we found that there was a 35% increase in disputed high bill complaints, which I'm sure everybody can relate to. And 67% of all complaints named billing as the issue that was driving those complaint types. Credit complaints are, issues that are often raised, particularly where it comes to affordability, payment difficulties, debt collection and disconnection. Those have also increased by 11% on last year. In relation to small business complaints, there's definitely been an increase there too. That 37% increase that I mentioned earlier relates to small business complaints in the energy industry. You can see a really good snapshot there of how that is distributed across energy users in New South Wales. What we're finding is that more people are aware of our service, more people are experiencing financial hardship, and as a result of that, more people are seeking our help. Because of the increased prices and across the board, not just in energy, but rent, operating costs, business costs, it's making it harder for those small business owners to keep on top of their energy bills. There are 84,000 small businesses in New South Wales. That's a lot of small businesses to manage all of the various associated costs that are running, that are involved in running their businesses. And we've identified that between January and March alone of this year, 3,900 of those businesses missed out on their pay on time discount. And that's just some of the issues that are impacting small business customers in New South Wales at the moment. So what we help with is a vast array of issues that relate to energy, electricity, gas, and water. But the top three issues that tend to be raised when it comes to small businesses are issues around billing. So whether that is fees or charges associated with your account, whether that's that you think your bill is particularly high or you don't think that your bill is an accurate reflection of your usage. It could be complaints around credit. So whether that's disconnection, whether that's, billing and credit associated with each other, like you've received a high bill and therefore, pardon me, and therefore you're in arrears or you're having difficulty paying. The other thing that is very specific to small businesses is network tariffs. So a small business might be on an incorrect network tariff code, or you might be on a tariff code that's for a residence rather than a business. You might be finding that your demand charges are quite high. These are all of the things that we receive complaints about that relate specifically to small businesses. So if you are experiencing any of these issues, or if you know of anyone that's experiencing any of these issues, you can give us a call and we can go through them all with you. The way that we review all of this data, all of these stats that I've given you is, and the way that we gather it all is people call us, they tell us about what's going on. We investigate the issues that customers raise. We talk to retailers to try and identify where things are going wrong, how we can assist in resolving a complaint. We look at a variety of different billing issues. Sometimes it's just as simple as helping you understand your bill or your contract. That can sometimes give people a lot of relief in terms of feeling a little bit more in control of what's happening with their energy bill. And if we're not the right body to come to, we have and we do apply what's called a no wrong door approach, which is that if you've come to us and we're not the best space for you to be in, we provide you with referrals to agencies that can give you the assistance that you need. One thing that we really do need to consider, though, when it comes to small businesses and the rules and regulations that relate to energy is what the jurisdiction of what E1's jurisdiction is when it comes to assisting a small business customer. So we look at that by identifying what a small business is. So the definition of a small business in terms of E1's jurisdiction is that it's either a business that has less than 20 full-time employees, an aggregated annual turnover of less than 2 million, or consumes less than 100 megawatt hours electricity or 1,000 gigajoules per annum, and that's gas. So our charter defines businesses that meet those criteria as a small business. And if you are within that definition, and if you do meet that criteria, then we are able to assist you. One aspect that is really important to consider is that there might be a number of small businesses that do have less than 20 full-time employees, but are still classified as a large customer because of their usage. If this is something that you're unsure of, you can still raise that complaint or query with us, and we can identify whether or not that is the case for your business. But an example of that is for, say, a company or a customer that runs a small bakery. They might not necessarily have the resources of a really large company, and particularly the resources to manage their relationship with their provider. And they still might be exposed to the same sort of billing and credit complaints as other small retail customers. But if you're a small business and you are that small bakery where you've got less than 20 full-time employees, you earn less than 22 million annual turnover, but you have a really high consumption, that's still something that we can review. So when a customer contacts a retailer to open an account, that retailer needs to identify whether or not that customer, whether or not that business is a residential or a business customer. And that's one of the first steps that happen in that account establishment process. So when a retailer, so your electricity provider, for example, notifies the distributor, so that's the owner of the network, so like Ausgrid or Essential Energy or Endeavour Energy, for example, of a business customer, the distributor has to classify them as either a large customer or a small customer, depending on their consumption. That consumption gets looked at over a period of 12 months. And the reason that they do it for 12 months is to make sure that an appropriate review of what that business is consuming has been done over a long enough period to identify whether or not you use more or less energy. So once the distributor has established whether or not you have high consumption in line with a larger customer or lower consumption in line with a smaller customer, they can identify what classification your business should be on, and they use that to then identify what network tariff you should have applied to your energy account. So that, along with a variety of other things, are the sorts of steps and considerations that you do need to keep in mind when you're opening an account. Opening an account for a small business is going to be different than opening a residential account. The steps that you take when you are opening an account for your home are going to be different than the steps that you take when you open an account for your business. So what I'm going to do is go through a few things that are really important to consider when you are beginning that process, just to make sure that you're ticking all of the right boxes and making sure that you are getting absolutely the right account set up for your usage and your business. So we always recommend that you start by asking your current provider if that's who you want to stay with or be with, or if it's a new business, once you've done your research around which providers might offer you the best rates, asking that provider about the discounts that they have available to you. Ask them about pay on time discounts if they are an option. Ask them about what are the benefits of opening a dual fuel account. So that means, some retailers might offer you a discount for having gas and electricity with them, rather than just one or the other. And often there are discounts associated with paying by direct debit. So check all of those things when you first sign up or when you're doing your research. Also make sure that your retailer has your business account set up on the correct network tariff. So I spoke briefly previously about making sure the network tariff that you're on is correctly associated with the amount of energy that you use. This might be a little bit harder to do because it may take a little bit longer for the retailer to work out how much energy you need or how much of a strain you might be putting on your business might be putting on the network. But one of the first questions to ask when you are setting that account up is making sure that you are on a network tariff associated with a business, and then a network tariff associated with the amount of energy that you use. Charges and rates are often higher for businesses, particularly for businesses that are classified as large retail customers. The reason for that, as I mentioned, is because large consumption or large retail customers often put more of a drain on the network and therefore get charged more for the energy that they use. So you might be able to save on some of your operating costs if you can be classified as a smaller user. If you are a smaller user, that may not necessarily be the case, but it's always worth checking. The other thing that's really worth doing that everyone forgets about, and everyone gets sent the letters saying your contract's about to expire, contact us to make sure you can be on the same tariff, or contact us to make sure that we can offer you a beneficial tariff. If your market retail contract is expiring or has expired and you haven't renegotiated a new contract yet, it's really likely that the contract is just going to be rolled over to a standard retail contract, which basically means that you're not going to be getting the rates that you could be getting if you had negotiated a better deal. So put that on the list of things to talk to your retailer about next time you get that letter saying your market retail contract term is expiring. And as we said, standard rates are typically higher than market rates, and they don't tend to have the incentives associated with other sorts of discounts. So have that conversation with them too, to make sure that you're really setting your business up and you're really setting your energy account up to do the best that it can for you. Now, I'll just quickly say that if there are any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. I'll stop here and there just to make sure that everyone's following along, and feel free to put your hand up, or I'll just wait until the end to just make sure that everyone's following along with me and address any questions that come up. I think Evra might be letting me know if the questions are coming up in the chat that I need to look at. So tenancy issues. More often than not, a business is not going to operate out of a premise that they own. Often businesses operate out of a rental premise, and the rent is obviously part of the business costs, associated with running that business. So there are often tenancy issues that, well, not often, but sometimes tenancy issues can arise, and tenancy related to energy issues can arise when it comes to your small business. So make sure that your lease really clearly states who's responsible for paying the energy and water accounts. Basically, if it's in your name or if it's in your business's name, you and that business are responsible for paying that energy and water account. If you are in a position where you feel like you need to call up your retailer and have a conversation about anything to do with your energy account, if you aren't listed as an account holder or as an authority on that account, your retailer is not obliged to have that conversation with you. So it's always worth double checking your bill if you can't find your contract before you do make that call. Or if you do make that call, or you need to make that call, and you do consider yourself to be an authorized representative, but you're not on the bill, get the person who is to call your retailer and authorize you, which is stated in that next point. And if you have any issues or any disputes regarding who might be responsible for that account, or you're unable to get the assistance that you need from the account holder, you can also contact the New South Wales Small Business Commissioner. And if your premise is separately metered for water or energy, that's a really important thing to make a note of before you move in or out of that premise. So when it comes to choosing a retailer and an energy offer, we mentioned earlier that when you're opening up your business or opening up that account, or even starting to think about what the options are that are available to you when it comes to an energy contract, you need to think about who to choose, what they're offering, and whether or not that suits you best. We mentioned earlier that standard contracts tend to be more expensive than market contracts. You can buy electricity and gas from a standard retailer, or you can take up a market contract with another licensed retailer. So the best thing to do is shop around. Everyone says this all the time, but it's good advice for a reason. Shop around and find an offer that suits your business needs and your business budget the best. Think about things like the length of the contract. Think about things like what the payment options are and what the billing frequency is, just to make sure that you are getting the best available contract for you and your business. Some discounted offers for fixed terms often will include an early termination fee if the account is closed before the end of the contract term. So make sure you're across that and aware of that if that's the case. And also consider that there are circumstances with some retailers where business customers might be asked to pay a security deposit at the start of the contract or at some point during it. What else? And with a market contract, you may be offered, a special deal or a discount by that retailer if you agree to switch to them. Make sure that that is included in the contract that you eventually sign electronically or otherwise. The one way that we, E1, can recommend all customers for that matter, look at the options available to them when it comes to energy providers is by going to Energy Made Easy. So Energy Made Easy is a website run by the Australian Energy Regulator. The reason why E1 can refer and recommend this is because it's completely unbiased. So the easiest way to use it is just, and that the link is there. So if you want to take a picture of that and that opening page, you should. Basically, you put your suburb in or your postcode and you choose what kind of energy plan you're looking for. And what will happen is it'll bring up all of the options in your area with all of the rates per kilowatt hour. And if you then click on it, it'll often take you through to another page where it'll show you what discounts or offers, special offers they might have available for you. So that's a really good way of getting informed before you take that step to contact the retailer that you think might be best for you. What I might do now is go through some case studies. It's always really good to get examples of what sort of complaints are actually happening, what people are actually calling about, and how those complaints or issues get resolved. So I'll go through a couple of examples of those. I can see that there's a couple of Evram's popped some links to resources in the chat, which are really, really useful. So the Energy Made Easy website link is there. So just hit that if you want to go and have a look. And also there's a link there to our fact sheets for small business customers. Both of those are really, really useful. All right, so I'll go to some case studies. As I said, having some real life examples have always been really helpful for me. So I'll go through a couple of real life examples of issues that have been raised with us by customers. Obviously, they're all de-identified, but it gives you a good sense of complaints that people have and how they get resolved. This is a little bit content heavy, so what I'll do is I'll hit the main points, and then if anyone has some questions, just pop them in the chat and I can address them now or at the end. So this case study is about Mr. L, who closed his business during lockdown. When he closed his energy account, he disputed the accuracy of the estimated bills that he had received, including his final meter reading. Estimated bills are when a retailer or a meter reader doesn't actually come and read your meter. They issue you a bill based on your historic usage or the usage of a comparable customer. So they're not considered to be accurate. Mr. L raised his concerns with his retailer, and the retailer then asked the network provider to adjust the readings, but the network provider declined. So the retailer then offered the customer, Mr. L, a $600 credit to reduce the $3,620 bill, but Mr. L rejected that offer because obviously he still didn't feel like that bill was an accurate reflection of his usage. So he was dissatisfied with the outcome that was offered to him by his retailer, and on that basis, he contacted E1. So earlier I mentioned all of the different steps that we go to in reviewing a complaint, and this is part of that process. So as part of our investigation, what we did was look at all of the information that we could get from Mr. L and from the retailer to provide a really comprehensive and context-based review of what had happened with his account. So we noted that his account was closed in early 2022 and that the meter was removed in March of 2022. The meter was inside the building but hadn't been read due to lack of access, which seems pretty obvious because if it's inside and you're not giving someone access to that meter, you're going to get estimated bills because the retailer can't access the meter to do an actual read. The retailer considered that the estimated consumption was consistent with the actual consumption recorded before the disputed period. So that would have been because, as I mentioned, estimated bills are based on historic usage more often than not. So if the retailer had issued Mr. L with estimated bills, it's clear that they were issuing those estimated bills based on his historic usage. Our investigation identified that before April of 2021, Mr. L had been billed on an actual read. But during the first COVID lockdown, he was billed 82.79 kilowatt hours per day based on actual meter data, which is quite a lot. During the second lockdown, his consumption was estimated at 229 kilowatt hours a day, which is a significant increase. And as the account was closed, before a new actual meter reading could be taken, there wasn't a reconciliation of the meter data. So there wasn't a reconciliation between the previous actual read of 82.79 kilowatt hours to 229 kilowatt hours at the final reading point. So what that meant, what the outcome was with all of that information and all of that review, was that we asked the retailer to adjust the estimated data for the second period to match the first, but they declined. And we asked the retailer to contact the meter provider who had replaced the meter to find out if the data had been taken from that old meter when it was removed. So that's obviously to make sure that we can find out what the actual usage was at the time that the meter was removed. As a result, the retailer received the adjusted meter data from that meter provider, and Mr. L's account was rebilled in line with his actual consumption, which meant that he got a refund on his account of $1,611, which is a really great outcome. It meant that his actual read hadn't been reconciled against the estimated read that had been used to close his account. Doesn't look like there are any questions yet, so I'll carry on with another example of small business complaints that we get. So the problem was, the complaint was that this customer owned a cafe, which he had to close permanently in April 2020. He experienced a period of hospitalization following significant health issues, which resulted in him not being able to work. So his family were also experiencing a reduction in income from that, as well as due to COVID. He was then contacted by a collection agency for a gas account debt of $1,150. He contacted his retailer to discuss his circumstances, obviously to tell them that he was experiencing financial hardship and may not necessarily be able to contribute as much to his bill as he would normally be. And he was advised that no payment assistance could be provided to him on compassionate grounds because the account was a business account. So as part of our investigation, we contacted the retailer, and the retailer offered to waive the balance of the account, which was a really happy outcome for the customer. The retailer in this instance went above and beyond to assist that customer during the investigation, with consideration to the circumstances that he had experienced. However, if a framework had existed for business customers that are experiencing affordability challenges, the customer would have probably been able to negotiate a payment plan at an earlier opportunity, and the retailer would have probably recovered that debt rather than having to waive it. The reason why this case study and this example is so relevant is because the key issue here and the key point that I want to make here is that retailers don't actually have to offer payment plans to small business customers. The National Energy Retail rules only say that retailers have to offer payment plans to residential customers. So if you are working in or owning a small business and you are experiencing financial hardship, it's really important to consider that your business costs, the running costs of your business should really take into consideration whatever bills may occur as a result of running that business. Having said that, you can always call us regardless to find out whether there is anything that can be done and to make an attempt at reviewing the accuracy of the billing, finding out if there is any help that can be provided to you, or if there are any outcomes that might be available to you that you may not necessarily be aware of. So this slide is really helpful in providing a bit of a visual around who can access consumer protections. So consumer protections are what I mentioned earlier about in the previous slide about business customers not being eligible for payment plans according to the National Energy Retail rules. So this slide outlines what the consumer protection is, which kind of customer is eligible for it, and whether or not business customers are eligible for it. So as you can see, there are significantly more consumer protections that are applied to customers, residential customers, than there are to customers with a closed account or customers that are operating as a business. One thing that we really would like to emphasize is that there is always help available. As I mentioned previously, if you are in a situation where you are experiencing financial hardship, you know this thing now about retailers not having to offer a payment plan to a small business, and you don't know what to do. That doesn't mean you can't call and ask or find out whether there are options available to you. Small businesses experiencing affordability issues can access help. So the first step in doing that is to call your provider as soon as you can, just to discuss the situation really transparently and find out whether there are any options that they can offer you to assist you with that. One thing to consider is that while retailers' affordability programs don't extend to business customers, the earlier you contact that retailer, the more likely you are to get assistance. So that example of the business that ended up having their entire outstanding account balance waived because of the circumstantial issues that had happened around that business owner's health. If that business owner had contacted their retailer earlier, it's really likely that they would have been able to get on a payment plan of some description. If you do dispute an energy bill, pay an amount towards that bill that you consider to be reasonable. So E1 has what's called an undisputed payments policy. So what that means is if you get a $500 bill and you consider $300 of that bill to be in line with your usage, but you dispute $200 of it, so you think $200 of that bill isn't actually accurate, then pay towards the bill what you think you used rather than not paying anything at all. That way, the retailer can see that you are making reasonable endeavors to address the issue. You are paying for your consumption, but you're leaving the disputed amount unpaid because that's the bit that needs to be reviewed. This also is really helpful in preventing a large buildup of arrears. And as I said, it shows good faith. So pay towards the bill what you consider is actually what you've used and leave what you consider to be disputed unpaid while it's being resolved. So there are a few options for payment plans and payment assistance when it comes to small business debt. I mentioned that small businesses are expected to include their utility bills in their running costs. There's other information available around what the payment options might be for small businesses that are experiencing debt. So the National Energy Retail Rules does state that energy retailers aren't offered to require payment plans to small business customers, which we now know, but retailers have been flexible historically about offering payment plans to customers. So that perspective of ask for help. If you don't know, if you don't raise the issue, you won't be able to get the help that might be available to you. And you never know how flexible your retailer might be. They might provide significant assistance. They might provide you with a payment plan. They might provide you with, a delayed bill or an option to delay your payment, your next payment. So have the conversation. That's really important. And if the payment plan that they've offered you isn't affordable, open the dialogue and have that conversation with them. It can be a negotiation. It's just a matter of raising with them honestly what it is that you can or cannot afford. And if you are a small business customer and you're experiencing financial hardship, you can also, and you've had that conversation with your retailer, you can also come to us and ask about what options are available to you, and we can go through that with you as well. Contacting E1 doesn't necessarily have to be a complaint. It can be an inquiry as well, and we're very happy to provide you with advice if you need it. Another really amazing initiative is the National Energy Bill Relief Fund. So this is likely already being applied to all of the eligible small businesses. So if you look at your bill and you are an eligible small business, it's likely that you'll already see some of these payments being applied to your accounts. But what it is that eligible small businesses using less than 100 megawatt hours of energy per year will receive a $650 bill relief payment towards their electricity bill. So the retailer that you have, so your energy retailer, should be applying that payment to your account if you're eligible. It should have started getting applied from the 1st of July in quarterly installments. So it's not going to be the full $650, but it'll be split up across 4 over your next 4 bills. Embedded network customers, though, will be advised from October of this year whether or not what the process is for them to apply. And there is, if you want to take a picture of that slide, there is information there at that link. Eva may have put it in the chat. She did. Thanks, Ev. So there's information in the chat if you want to hit that link, or you can take a picture of that page, or you can Google it to find out more. There's also the Small Business Debt Helpline, which is an incredibly helpful resource, and one that I think everybody that operates in a small business should probably have information about. Essentially, the Small Business Debt Helpline in New South Wales is a professional financial counsellors service offering free and independent and confidential advice about your financial situation, around assisting you with budgeting or paying bills, free financial counselling around all of the business needs, as well as conversations around loan repayments, information around your tax, advice around bankruptcy, insolvency, and other legal options, as well as referrals to other appropriate services. It was set up by the Financial Counselling Australia, and is a really, really great resource for small businesses to make use of. So again, in a similar vein to sort of what E1 does, if you want to call and have a conversation, you can do that without committing anything. So give them a ring if you are experiencing any sort of debt associated to your small business that you would like a little bit of direction around. There is also the Accelerated Depreciation Initiative. So this is essentially an initiative put forward by the federal government, which helps small businesses upgrade their equipment and save energy. So if you are that example that I gave earlier about the bakery that had less than 20 employees, had really high consumption, but didn't make more than 2 mil a year, that small bakery would have really high bills. It's likely because they consume a lot of energy, and they may not have really energy efficient equipment. They may not have enough equipment, or they may not be doing what they can to necessarily save energy. So this would be a perfect initiative for them to look at. So all of that information is on the Energy Efficiency Council website with the link there. And small businesses might also qualify for free, independent, tailored energy advice through the Business Energy Advice Program. So that's also a program that we really strongly recommend you have a little look at. Alternatively, you can ask us about that and we can send you in the right direction. Another aspect to do with businesses, small businesses that and residences, but that people find really daunting and quite confusing is embedded networks. You will often find that a business, particularly one that operates out of a shopping centre or a new build, will be more likely than not operating out of an embedded network. So I'll go through a little bit what that is and what that means. So embedded networks are private energy networks which supply homes or businesses with energy in a specific area. So the example that I gave of a shopping centre, so it'll be businesses often in shopping centres or on the ground floor of apartment buildings. It can be retirement villages and residential complexes. It can also be residential parks, but different rules apply for selling in residential parks. So if you need more information about that, contact us separately. The way that embedded networks operate, how they work, is that essentially the embedded network operator purchases energy from an energy retailer to supply to customers in that embedded network. That's a really good diagram of how it works. I'll just repeat that because it's hard to get your head around. An embedded network operator purchases energy from an energy retailer to supply to customers in an embedded network. So if you're in a house, a residential house, for example, you're buying energy directly from your retailer. It's essentially one more step. And as we said, embedded networks and small businesses are now becoming quite synonymous. So some small businesses will operate within an embedded network, and embedded network customers don't have all of the same consumer protections that customers that don't operate out of an embedded network do. The reason for that is because embedded network operators aren't required to be an E1 member, and E1 cannot compel embedded network operators to work with us. So we can provide information, we can give you advice, but E1 can't compel an embedded network operator to provide information or comply with our decisions. We engage with them to make sure that customers are getting as much assistance as they possibly can. But for many complaints, we're not able to achieve an outcome that we might want to, as we do for small business customers of members of our scheme. So small businesses have less customer protections, less consumer protections when they're operating out of an embedded network than when they're not. Embedded networks are often a mix of residential and commercial complexes. So you might see that example of an apartment with an apartment complex with shops on the ground floor is a really good one. In those networks, residential customers often have higher consumer protections than the small businesses that are in the same building. It's something that our embedded networks and the customer protections associated with them is something that our policy and systemic issues team works on pretty consistently. They're working to ensure that embedded businesses operating out of an embedded network are provided with clarity around the rules, regulations that apply to them, transparency, accountability, and ultimately protections aligned with that of the mass market small business customer. Basically everybody else. I'm just going to quickly check the chat and see if there are any questions yet. No, but there are some really great links in there that Evrim has popped in. So again, if you want access to that information really quickly, just jump in the chat and hit one of those links. All right, so we're going to talk about managing energy consumption. So everybody wants to try and save money on their energy bills, whether you're a small business customer or not. These are ways that you can begin becoming more aware of what your consumption is and therefore saving your pennies where you can. So there's the energy rating calculator. So essentially, if your business runs fridges, air cons, dishwashers, other big appliances, you can use this to compare running costs before you buy them. So that's before you buy those appliances. The energy saving scheme, which is an incentive that installs energy efficient equipment and appliances in households and businesses, as well as if you were to visit the Department of Climate Change and Energy, the Environment and Water, to see how you can improve energy efficiency and reduce waste within your workplace. And all of the links are there as well, whether you want to take a picture, screenshot, or I'm sure everyone will put those in the chat. Other ways, other tips and tricks that you can use to save energy in your business. If you are a business that has need of refrigeration or significant use of refrigeration, having an energy efficient fridge will save you hundreds of dollars on your power bills every year. I think that goes without saying. Being conscientious about things like lights and the maintenance of your appliances will also have an impact on how much energy you're using. Keeping fridges at least 60% full and freezers at least 70%, 75% full also has an impact on how much energy those appliances are using. And thinking about whether or not you qualify for a New South Wales government upgrade for a new one might be worth considering as well. In terms of lighting, a lot of these, and also just as a side note, a lot of these tips and tricks are applicable for residences as well. So replacing your globes with energy efficient globes, I think everyone does that, and only switching on lights when you need them. I know that that might be a little bit different for a business where you need to be light and bright all the time. Making sure that you are switching appliances off when they're not in use, or using timers to automate the process. Trying where you can to invest in energy efficient equipment. And also trying where you can to educate employees about energy efficient practices would probably go a long way. Using energy efficient motors can also deliver savings that might offset higher purchases. And servicing your equipment, your appliances regularly, making sure that things are adequately ventilated, and using variable speed drives are all ways that you can reduce your energy consumption as well. In terms of hot water, you can switch to gas or off-peak rates to save some of your some money when it comes to your gas and your hot water. Sydney Water and Hunter Water also offer really good savings advice. All of their information for that is on their website. One really great thing, well, one really interesting thing to acknowledge is that heating, ventilation, and air conditioning can account to up to half of your bill, which is a lot. So if you're able to adjust the temperature by a little bit, it's probably going to have an impact. This is something that is certainly a complaint that we get at E1 when there's been an outage of any description, whether it's unplanned or planned. Supply interruptions really can have an impact on the way that your business operates. So I've got a little bit of information here about what happens, what your responsibilities are, and what we recommend. It is the regulation states that distributors, so that will be the network provider. So, you know, depending on where you are, it might be Ausgrid or Endeavour Energy or Essential Energy. They are supposed to give customers 4 business days notice ahead of a scheduled supply interruption. They're not necessarily going to text you. Usually that information is provided to customers by email, more often a letterbox drop, but it's your responsibility to arrange your backup. So if there's going to be a planned interruption and you are informed of it within that, you know, more than 4 days or more ahead of that scheduled date, arrange a generator if your business requires power during that interruption. You might also want to investigate what the options are around backup energy systems, or the insurance options available to you to cover you in the event that there's damage or loss that is caused by an unscheduled interruption. But at the utmost, we really recommend that businesses install surge protection devices, just to make sure that they prevent any damage that might happen in the event of a surge or the energy coming back on when the outage is over. I've got a page here that has a whole bunch of really useful links to various organizations or pages that I've mentioned in the presentation. So if you want to take a snip or a screenshot or a picture of that, they're all there. Links to the Small Business Commissioner, which has really helpful information about energy and small businesses. All of our fact sheets that we have available in many languages if you want to have a look at our website, as well as the web address for the Small Business Debt Helpline that I mentioned earlier, and Energy Made Easy, and information about any other information sessions or events that we have coming up. It's always worth having a look at that just in case there might be something that's relevant to you. And alternatively, you can always email us at that email address there. I think that we're done. I think we've run ahead of time. So if there's anyone in here at the moment that would like to ask some questions, we've got a little bit of time left before the session is over. 10 minutes or so.